I'm so grateful to have been invited to talk to you this morning, and it's just a shame I'm doing it remotely and I can't engage in discussion with you. But the formation of the Berkeley Society in 1973 and the declaration of the Berkeley Conservation Area in the same year are amongst the happiest events in my life. When we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Berkeley Society and the Berkeley Conservation Area, it's easy to forget that for the 25 years or more before 1973, Berkeley had been threatened with destruction, a great swathe of destruction running across the middle of the conservation area. And that was because the South Cross route of the London motorway box, enshrined in the LCC development plan of 1952, the South Cross route of the motorway box was going to run along the Lewisham to Dunhead Railway. There were safeguarding lines which show the destruction of a lot of Victorian property. The reason why the Breakspears building of South East London College is so far from the railway is because the motorway was going to run between it and the railway. You can see the houses in Breakspears Road that were going to be demolished by the motorway, and indeed 16A Tresillian Road and the adjoining property, which were also going to be demolished, and the group of houses on the other side of the college car park. That was the line of the motorway, and it was then going to take off through the old station building on the other side of Lewisham Way. It was going to take off on a giant viaduct running across the middle of Lewisham before it then plunged into Blackheath and destroyed the middle of Blackheath village. I played my part in the opposition to the motorway, but there was surprisingly little opposition in the 50s and 60s to so much of the rest of it. One of the things that I found when I became chair of planning in Lewisham in 1972 was that all the main roads in the borough had got safeguarding lines which allowed them to be turned into dual carriageways at some future date. And you can see it throughout Lewisham, where such new building as was built along those roads was set back a long way. That's why you suddenly get these strange paved forecourts in front of modern buildings. You can see it, well, for example, in Brockley Road, the post office sorting office in Brockley Road is set back behind. It's quite useful because there is a bus stop there now, and the bus queues can be accommodated on this safeguarding line. These properties had no permanent life. They were going to be pulled down. It was all madness, of course. There would never have been the money to pull them, to buy them and pull them down. It's hard to remember that was what was going to happen in the name of modernity. What in fact happened, of course, in the end was the building of the M25. So when I succeeded Ron Pepper as chair of planning in 1972, I wanted to declare great swathes of Victorian houses as conservation areas. And Stephen Byrne was horrified. He said, but we'll have to have extra staff, extra development control staff. We'll never be able to deal with it. We'll never get the money for more staff. And I said, leave it to me. Because I knew that the new councillors elected in 1971 had got a whole lot of allies of conservation. And we formed as it were, an action group within the Lewisham Labour Group for promoting conservation and planning. A substantial part of the borough is now conservation areas consisting of Victorian houses, I was going to say rich, middling and poor, a nice mixture of the whole social range. Those are some of the human and emotional issues which are quite difficult to grapple with when we're discussing conservation areas and what their past has been and what their future may be. This does raise difficulties because with the word conservation so easily goes the word gentrification. The Brockley Society, when it was formed, was a society of gentrifiers. And we just need to be honest about that and be aware of the terrible responsibility that comes with coming in and playing about with somebody else's area. What I was really fundamentally interested in was community involvement in planning. But that's where it gets very interesting, because we're dealing here with people, mixed backgrounds, mixed class backgrounds, mixed ethnic backgrounds, who may be approaching the area and its problems from very, very different angles. Because the danger is that if the whole thing is wrapped in planning jargon, the only people who are going to discuss it with the professionals are other professionals. And that then means that professionals who've moved into the area, the gentrifiers, have a monopoly of the discussion. So, as I say, we do need to think carefully about gentrification, but we also need to think carefully about the motives that people can have. With gentrification goes the purchase of property, goes discussions about property values, the fact that declaring conservation areas can actually quite considerably increase the value of property in an area so that it gets out of reach of people who originally lived there. But uncovering these threats needs perpetual watchfulness and a great deal of action, not only action by the community, but the community achieving action by the council, perpetual monitoring. And the trouble is that the savage cutbacks in local authority spending over the last 13 years, anything between 40% and 60%, depending on what you read, but let's just say huge cutbacks. These do mean that there are very few officers available to do this kind of monitoring. It's the job of the community and the professionals to get together and discover how this can be done to everyone's benefit. So there are many difficult issues here: social issues, financial issues, planning issues, which all leave conservation areas and the discussion of them in a state of crisis. And there's a danger that in gaining a lot financially and in terms of how houses beautifully looked after, we lose a great deal in terms of the community and its enjoyment of the conservation area. And I'm sure a lot of these difficult issues will be discussed at this conference. All these ambiguities and uncertainties, hypocrisies, the combination of self-interest and public benefit. These are all matters which I'm sure you'll have a fine time discussing.